on this very warm evening in Portland, but we really appreciate you taking the time. And as Marty has said, hopefully you're in a place that's at least moderately comfortable and can pay attention and relax and do what you need to do during this time to take care of yourself. So just when we sent out the agenda about a week ago, but just wanted to let you know sort of what you were in for tonight. We're just going to do a quick welcome and explain a few things at the offset of this meeting, and then we'll do a quicker round of introductions so you all can remember who each of you are. We'll then have a round of public comment if there's anyone from the public that wants to speak. And then we'll go through a presentation, which is going to be just a lot of sort of information on existing conditions, some of the work that we've done so far in that analysis. And so we're excited to share it with you and get your feedback. Hopefully it's some things that you haven't learned before. And after that, we'll do a quick small group breakout discussion. And part of that, we'll explain a little bit later, but part of that's just to get to know each other. And, you know, it's typically in sort of these normal times when we could be together, we just, you know, move some chairs around and meet in smaller groups and talk. But we're sort of going to try to do that virtually. And then we'll come back together as a big group and report out. Then we'll transition and talk a little bit more about our public involvement plan and what that means and how it's going to impact what we're doing over the next couple of months. And then we'll come back and hopefully have a little bit of time at the end to just talk as a group. You all can ask any questions, and then we'll talk about next steps and be out of here by 8 o'clock. Hopefully it'll be below 100 at that point. Marty, do you want to go ahead and share?
Yeah, so thanks again for 100% participation in the doodle poll. It was great to get that feedback. I will say that it was a pretty close call. We did have the most votes for the fourth Monday of the month, with the third Monday being a close backup. So that's kind of where we've landed. Interestingly enough, as we're looking ahead, you know, a reminder that we're going to be taking the summer off as far as the committee meetings, although there will be still a lot of engagement with emails and more of the, I would say, the summer outreach happening this summer. But as far as the committee goes, we will be meeting together in September, so on the fourth Monday. And then I was just looking at the November calendar and just the way that Thanksgiving falls and trying to navigate that. I'm proposing that we meet on the third Monday. And so it may be that kind of moving forward as a committee, the fourth Monday is kind of the default, with the third Monday being a backup depending on holidays or, you know, just dates that we need to navigate around. So this is right now the proposed fall meeting schedule. So just wanted to share that.
Can I just jump in? I'm confused that we're talking about monthly meetings, but I only see a September and a November. Is there no October and December?
Yeah, so we're not meeting monthly. We as a committee are scoped to have a minimum of 7 meetings, and that is a kickoff meeting plus 7 meetings. So the kickoff meeting was more of an orientation, so 8 meetings altogether. So that kind of works out to be not quite every other month, but I will say that as a committee, if there is a need kind of bubbling up from the committee to have a meeting because you feel like a conversation needs further conversation, then we do have some flexibility to hear and kind of respond to that. So again, this is not a monthly commitment. We wanted to be really clear about that, but it is. And so there was a slide I shared at the last meeting that had kind of the committee roadmap, and we'll share it again at the end of the presentation today. So I'm going to pause and just see if there's any more questions on the meeting dates, and then also just to see if folks had any feedback on the committee charter and bylaws, because we definitely want to incorporate any changes if folks had some feedback there. And if folks need to go back to that email that I sent with the bylaws and respond at a later time, that's totally appropriate too. So. Okay. So why don't we?
Yeah, we just. I was just reading the chat. Somebody said it looks good. So.
Yeah. And again, always feel free. People process things at different time frames, so feel free to email Brian and myself. Okay, so we're going to just do team introductions really quickly. I'll start with myself and then the Bureau of Planning and Sustainability staff. So I'm Marty Stockton. I'm the co-project manager on this project, and I don't have my colleagues here with me tonight because I have Andrea Pastor is at she's at a neighborhood coalition meeting tonight. Bill Cunningham is preparing for a big open house on Wednesday. And then Eric Ingstrom is our supervisor. So that's the BPS side of the team. Brian?
Yeah, so hi everyone, I'm Brian Poole. I'm a transportation planner with PBOT in our area and project planning team. It's good to see a lot of you again. And with me tonight, I'll allow them to introduce themselves, but we have Zeph Wagner. Zeph, do you want to say hi?
Hi everybody, Zeph Wagner. I'm another transportation planner at PBOT, helping out with this project.
And Shane Valley.
Shane Valley, also with PBOT.
And Corrine Montana.
Hi, I'm Corrine Montana. She, her pronouns, and I'm on the PBOT side. I work in active transportation and safety. My day job is Safe Routes to School, but I also am involved in projects like this.
Awesome, thanks. And Mauricio Leclerc is our supervisor. He may or may not show up this evening. And then ODOT, who's managing this project and helping fund it. We have Hector Rodriguez Ruiz, and he may join as well. And then we also wanted to just highlight and express our excitement about having an Oregon Summer Fellow joining us for this weekend, or this summer at a student at Portland State University, Scott Goodman. I think he is a resident. And so he's excited to jump in, and this is going to be his sort of full-time summer fellowship, is working on this project. So Scott, do you want to say hi and maybe sort of the area you live in, and yeah, just do a quick summary?
Oh, yeah, I'm Scott Goodman. So I'm a second-year Masters of Urban and Regional Planning student at Portland State University. And everything about this project is totally my jam. I'm super excited. I already know a handful of folks that are here, and I live in the Brentwood, Darlington area and walk all over the place and bike all over the place, and I'm extremely excited to be a part of the next vision.
Awesome, thanks, Scott. We're very happy and appreciative to have you joining us for the summer. So we're going to do now some introductions, and we probably don't have as much time as we did last meeting to dedicate to this, but we would love for you to just share your name and preferred pronoun if you're comfortable with that, the neighborhood or a relationship to the project area, neighborhood that you live in, and then also the favorite way, or I guess a way that you're trying to stay cool these last few days. If you have any tips or tricks, we'd love to hear them. So like last meeting, I'll just probably go down the list and read the names. And if you wouldn't mind to, if you're not a member of the committee, please just note that when you're doing your introduction so that we know that you're a member of the public, which you're welcome to join and attend, but that just so we know that you're not technically a member of the advisory committee. So it looks like first up on my list is Nancy. Do you want to go first?
Well, good evening, everybody. So I'm the president of the 82nd Avenue Roses Business Association. I live in Brentwood, Darlington, and I have been even worked on Lentz and on Foster, so have a lot of experience in the area and interest in it. We even had a cleanup on Saturday, believe it or not. It was a little toasty, but we were done by noon, and we got 23 bags of trash in a couple of hours. So it's yeah, it's pretty exciting to be part of this. You know, mine's a combination of an air. Anyway, yesterday I was where there was a air conditioner, and today I'm where there are fans. And I have to say the air conditioner was cooler, but I'm home where there's fans. So, you know, it's a toss up. So, oops.
Yeah, for sure. Well, thanks. Thanks for joining us. Julie, do you want to go next?
Sure. Hi, I'm Julie. She, her pronouns. I'm a homeowner in Lentz, so I really want to be a part of all the stuff that goes on here. And I'm ride my bike a lot and walk, and just I really want to be able to contribute or see change in that area with safer streets and more bikeable streets, and even just making it a more walkable neighborhood with places to go to. So really honored to be a part of this and excited to see where it goes. Oh, as far as cooling off, I'm very fortunate to have air conditioning, but I have been out on my bike, and yeah, on Saturday we had a group ride and we ended it over at the Salmon Street fountain and just got completely drenched and acted like 10-year-olds running around in the fountain. So that was amazing, and we need to do that again. So highly recommend fountains.
Sounds great. Well, thanks for joining us this evening. Anna, do you want to go next?
Sure. Anna Weichsel. I'm living right at the border, Brentwood, Darlington, and Woodstock. I'm the Woodstock Neighborhood Association chair, and we are engaging in a right-of-way project. And it's coming along. It's actually really exciting to get so much feedback from neighbors saying like, yeah, we want to have like little areas to sit out. Well, not today, but in general. And it's really interesting. So we got a lot of feedback for this. And I'm also really interested in having the neighborhood more walkable and, you know, to attract more people to speak out what they are wishing for, so we can have more public spaces to talk about what's coming and what's changing and what we need to do. And for cooling, I'm also very fortunate to have the AC running all day long. But I also, in addition to that, I have a little bowl with cold water underneath my desk and put my feet in there all the time. It's very helpful. So yeah, that's all.
Yeah, thanks. That's a good tip. Aaron, do you want to go next?
Sure. Aaron, I use he, him pronouns. I live in the east end of Brentwood, Darlington, just adjacent to the 78th Avenue drag racing track that it sometimes feels like. I'm a cyclist in the neighborhood and commute to work, and worry about the safety of walkers and young families who walk along 78th Avenue and other areas, and just know that there's so much possibility for safety and community walkability, and also see the barriers that prevent people that are not nearly as aggressive of cyclists or so I want to relieve some of those. And speaking of those young families, yesterday I spent time with friends and their 3 kids with feet in the kiddie pool, or the adults planned for feet in the kiddie pool. The kids planned for water being poured all over and splashed all over everyone, but it dried within 2 minutes, so it was all fine.
That sounds fun. Well, thanks for joining us this evening. Ben, you want to go next? Are you there, Ben? Or we can come back to you. Carol-Ann, do you want to go next?
Hey, I'm Carol-Ann. I'm interested in this project because I live in the area. I live in 80th and Woodstock. I just bought my first house this year. I also work in land use. So 2 things are right up my alley. How I stay cool is my house is sweltering. I do not have AC, so I'm actually at work still. We have great AC at work, except for it stopped working today, so it's actually rising right now. So I'm starting to feel warm again. If I leave, it's because it got too hot. And I just wanted to also mention that I walk quite a bit. My dog and I walk about 5 miles a day through our area, and I love that we have so many parks, but I just wish that some of the access points to the parks were more pedestrian friendly. So I'm hoping that is something that is brought up within the course of this project. So thank you, everyone.
Great, thank you. Jed, can you go next?
Yeah. I live across Foster, just outside the area, but visit a lot of friends and family who live in the target area. I love walking around and exploring the different streets, even the gravel ones, running, walking. It's also really interesting to me. I'll be interested to see how pedestrian transportation stuff goes on, but also I'm curious to see about how the neighborhood will be developed commercially as well, to give maybe people who live there more opportunities to not have to leave the neighborhood to get things they need. I've been trying not to move very much and not very fast to stay cool.
That's a good trick. Thanks for being here tonight. Let's see, my list keeps jumping around. Kathy, can you go next?
Hi. I've lived here, I don't want to date myself, but probably going on 30 years now. So in part, I want to see the neighborhood continue to develop in a good way, and also make sure nothing really weird happens to development, since I'm living literally right in the middle of much of what your plan outlined that was sent per email. I live on 72nd, just north of Flavel. So as you might well guess, I have a very intense interest in what goes on there. As for staying cool, I've cobbled together some portable ACs, and if I have to go outside, which I do, unfortunately, I try to get under mister if at all possible. That's about it.
Great, thank you. Melanie, can you go next?
Hi there. I'm a homeowner in Brentwood, Darlington. I work for Care Oregon as a nurse, so I have a lot of people that I look for resources for that are actually in this area. My Care Oregon in the metro area. My actual where I work is Washington County, but I'm always looking for resources for people in this area as well. So my favorite way to keep cool, I've got this new handy dandy, I got it for my birthday last month. It's a really nice like towel that my aunt gave me, and I just keep it cold and keep it on my shoulders, and I just went to go check out my daughter's cat, and because she's at a country fest in Colorado right now. So, and then I've got a cold water bottle of water like frozen between my legs. So I got that going for me.
Okay. Those are some good tips as well. Thanks for being here this evening. Michael, can you go next?
Am I the only Michael? There's usually a few of us.
Yeah, sorry, I think you're the only one this time.
My name is Michael Kennedy. I own a home in Mount Scott, Arletta at the intersection of 74th and the Woodstock Street Autobahn. I don't know how many of you are familiar with that, but it's a very violent street. Anyhow, I work for DQ. I'm in water quality. I do a lot of environmental work, so I'm very interested in being a part of this so that I can be a part of how this neighborhood develops for the next 50 to 100 years. I'd like to see a lot of walkability, a lot of pedestrian, biking, other modes of transportation other than cars and giant trucks would be really nice, and more self-sufficiency in the neighborhood, like more commercial development, more dense housing, mid-level housing for people, multifamily housing. And the way I've stayed cool is I haven't left my house in 3 days. I have central air conditioning and I covered up all the windows except for this one behind me. It's the only light source I've got going on right now, and I have not left the house.
That's a good strategy as well. Thanks for joining. Nick, can you go next?
Hi, I'm Nick Sovey. I use he, him pronouns, and I live in Woodstock and work for Rose Community Development, and we build affordable housing and do other kinds of community development in outer Southeast. And yeah, I guess my hopes for the project is that we talk about and commit to bold action. I mean, obviously today we can see the effects of climate change. We see the effects of homelessness every day, and just incremental changes are not going to get us where we need to go, either in the neighborhood or, you know, more globally.
Sure. Thanks for joining us this evening, Nick. Pam, can you go next?
Hello, everyone. Pam Hodge, she, her pronouns, and I'm a long-term resident of Brentwood, Darlington on the very southern border, 58th and Harney Drive. And I've been active in the Brentwood Darlington Neighborhood Association for about the last 5 years, principally advocating for open spaces, park design, and air quality. My particular interest in serving on this committee is creation of a 20-minute neighborhood as part of an overarching climate change strategy. And I too am blessed to have central air conditioning. So I've pretty much been a hermit in my house as well. But the other tip that I have is throw away your hairdryer, at least for now, and leave it wet, and that's amazingly cooling.
That's a good one. Well, thanks for joining, Pam. Ryan, can you go next?
Hey everyone, Ryan Ernst, live actually right by Pam, 57th and Tenino. Been in the neighborhood probably 4 years. Just want to maybe throw in like some ideas about projects that flow and make sense to the people that live in the neighborhood. I've seen a lot of projects that I scratch my head about, and I'm like, we have these death metal machines going down the street, and I'm riding my bike or I'm walking, and it doesn't make sense to them. If it doesn't make sense to them, then I'm still vulnerable times whatever. So, and yeah, I'm on this weird crusade where it's like, why are we putting speed bumps in bike lanes? Because I don't know why bikes need to slow down in 2021. How I stay cool, I have a pretty insatiable desire to find waterfalls or locate waterfalls that maybe most society doesn't go to, and maybe even throw a rope down there and find out what else is going on in that creek. So yeah, that's me. And I got a kid running around, so that's why my video is not on.
Okay, well, thanks, Ryan. And yeah, secret waterfalls. That's a really good one. Tim, you want to go next?
Hi, I'm Tim Williams. Use he, him. My wife and I are now 4 years homeowners in Mount Scott, Arletta, and we plan on raising our kids here. And so just really like the neighborhood. And I've lived in Oregon almost all my life and never had central AC until about 2 months ago. And I feel incredibly fortunate to have done that. But we've spent the last week telling our kids to please close the door. So it's a good learning experience for all of us.
Yeah. Well, thanks for joining. Valeria, do you want to go next?
Sure, thanks. Valeria McWilliams, I use she, her pronouns. I live in Lentz neighborhood on Holgate and 85th. So very familiar with the traffic and sort of safety feels on 82nd when you're walking or driving, and definitely not biking. I'm a city planner by training, and I work at Metro implementing both the affordable housing and supportive services loan programs. I am also the caretaker for my sister who has physical disabilities. And so I've sort of, my whole life, it's been a very interesting experience, like, trying to see and understand how she experiences the city and what are the things that are important to her and what she looks for, which sometimes is different from mine. So that's a unique perspective. And yeah, I mean, the neighborhood, having lived in different areas of Portland with greenways and I don't know, it has felt different living in Lentz, especially around 82nd, even by just driving a car. So I'm looking forward to being able to be more of a, use my mic more often or feel safe to do so, which I haven't been able to do so. So how am I staying cool? Well, I luckily did a getaway this weekend to a lake. So with a couple of friends, so we stay cool by just staying in the lake for as long as possible. And it was pretty great.
Great. Awesome. Well, thanks for sharing and thanks for joining. Vivian, can you go next?
Hi, everybody. I'm Vivian, she, her pronouns. I live in the southeast corner of Woodstock, and I walk, bike, and drive pretty equally these days. I used to bike almost exclusively, but since moving to Woodstock, I find that I bike less and walk less. So I'm really excited that this project is happening, that improvements are coming, and just very excited to be part of the process. To stay cool, I've moved my desk and my bed into the basement for the summer. So I'm pretty much living in the dungeon down here. I've also been getting up super early to go row on the river and kind of get outside since I'm not leaving the house during the day. So at 5:30 in the morning, things are still pretty tolerable.
Yeah, great. That's a good way to beat the heat. Just get up very early. Well, thanks for joining. Going back, Eleanor, can you say hi?
Hi everyone, I'm Eleanor, she, her. I'm a homeowner in Mount Scott, Arletta. I'm currently ferrying my 3-year-old from various cool places, so sorry that my video is off. I'm really excited to be a part of this project, kind of learning how to retain the great things about these neighborhoods and grow them and make sure that they're growing equitably, and kind of creating more opportunities for neighbors to interact. Speaking of which, one of the fun things I've done in the hot is go to the Creston Pool for play swim, which has been very exciting. But I'm happy to be here. Sorry, I'm mostly video off for this one.
That's fine. Yeah, no need to share your video. That goes for everyone. If if you're just not in the place or not in the mood to share your video, totally understand. So thanks for joining. And Ben, are you able to say hi?
Yes, yeah, I think this works now. Sorry, I had to change computers. I'm Ben Waterhouse. I use he and him. I am really excited to be a part of this committee. I've lived in Mount Scott Arleta for 13 years, just right next to the elementary school, to Arleta Elementary. And I've spent most of the past year walking just about every block in the neighborhood. I get around here by foot and bike and car, and I'm sorry, that fell off. I'm looking forward to making this place safer and friendlier for everybody and being a part of that. Thanks.
Great, thank you. I think that's everyone. If I didn't call on you, you want to speak up now? But I'm pretty sure I got through our list. And again, we really appreciate everyone joining us this evening. Very warm evening. I'm going to go back and share my screen again. And while we're going through this presentation, if you feel free to have your video on, turn your video off. That's totally whatever you feel most comfortable with. We have a slide open for public comment. I don't believe we have anyone from the public, so I just wanted to acknowledge that, but we'll forge ahead. And so in this next round of our evening, we'll just be going through a really quick overview of some of the findings that we've developed with, and they're all feeding into what we're calling an existing conditions atlas. It'll be essentially a booklet of maps with some text accompanying, explaining just some of the analysis that we've done so far for the project area. And so we wanted to give you, unfortunately, it's not quite ready to be shared. We just still need to fill in some holes and gaps, but felt it's close enough, and we really wanted to share the highlights with you all tonight and get feedback. So so with that, I'm probably gonna be the one walking through the slides, but I'd encourage my city colleagues to jump in and share context, answer questions as necessary. And we're gonna, as we mentioned before, once we finish this presentation, we'll do some just small breakout groups where you all will have a chance to sort of digest and talk about it in a smaller group. But if you have questions or clarifying things you want to raise, just feel free to do so in the chat while we're going through this, or just speak up. But before we jump into that, just wanted to remind everyone sort of the project area. So the Brentwood-Darlington neighborhood is really the core focus area and where we were looking at when we started development of this project. But we recognize the need for connections and issues in the sort of adjacent areas as well. So you can see sort of the broadened project area to the right. And as we stated last time, the goal of the plan is to develop strategies to increase livability and housing stability, and also improve access to employment, schools, local services and amenities, and recreational opportunities. So that's what's guiding us through this planning process. And as I mentioned before, this is really just a snapshot of the conditions in the project area, and it will help give us some of that baseline understanding that will help as we develop, do sort of more analysis and also get feedback from the public about needs and issues in the community. So we have a lot of information both on the land use side and some of the zoning and planning context, but also the transportation context as well in terms of transportation volumes, street classifications. So you'll see a lot of that in the next few slides. And as I mentioned, we will be sharing a draft of this following the meeting. We're hoping to do so within the next probably week or 2 weeks. So just jumping in, this is, we'll do this for sort of every slide that we go through, or most slides, showing the sort of project map. And sometimes they relate, sometimes they're different. So this, on this race and ethnicity map, people, we're just sort of highlighting here that in general, we sort of separate Lower Southeast, or the project area, from the city of Portland. And in general, in terms of how people identify, it's fairly close, comparable to the city. There are less people in the project area that identify as Black, and more people that identify slightly more as Hispanic or Latino, and then more people that identify as Asian. And this is the share of Portlanders that identify as Black, Indigenous, or people of color. And so the darker blue is where there's greater than 40%, and then it sort of goes down. So this is the fours of the dark. This is 31 to 40%, 22 to 30. The 2 is 15 to 20, and then less than 15. So you sort of see from east to west how that changes. And this, sticking with demographics, just as an age distribution of, on this side, it's the project area, so female, male. This is sort of the upper echelon, our most distinguished seniors, 85 and over, down to kids under 5. And this is female and male. And again, it's fairly similar numbers comparable to the city of Portland, but there are, in 2010, there was more youth under 18. That number's just dropped in the last data we have, 2019, they're the percentage-wise. And sort of slightly going up in terms of 18 to 34, more in the 35 to 64, but fairly modest increases there. And not too dramatically different from the rest of the city. This shows sort of household, on this side it's median household income. So this would be, the darker green is less than 47,000, and then the grading up to over 92,000 is the one. So again, you sort of see that east to west distribution on that map. And in terms of, this is a household comparison, so family households has been steady at 60%, which is higher actually than the city of Portland. And then married couple family households is also higher than the broader city. And non-family households is lower than the city of Portland. So I don't know if you all sense that, but there's sort of more, I would say, those identifying as families as opposed to people living alone in the project area. And those have stayed pretty consistent from 2010 to 2019. In terms of educational attainment, that's what this on this upper left. So those people in Lower Southeast with less than a high school diploma, the percentage of those has declined in the last 10 years. So 16% in 2010, in 2019, it's 11. It has also gone down in the broader city. And those with the high school diploma has declined as well, and as well as some college. But then you see here the dramatic sort of increase in those with a bachelor's degree or a master's degree or higher. So in 2010, it was 17 to 25, master's degree was 6 to 13. And that does trend somewhat with the city as a whole, but it is percentage-wise greater than the city as a whole. So, and then this just breaks down that high school diploma or less by ethnicity. So there has been declines in sort of all races, and owners or renters has stayed pretty consistent throughout the last 10 years. And in terms of town centers and neighborhood centers, and then civic corridors or neighborhood corridors, Marty can maybe fill in the gaps here, but sort of this is sort of what we talked about last time in terms of the lack of those in the project area. Marty, do you want to fill in?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think there's too much more to say other than there had been some very early on Bureau of Planning and Sustainability staff exploration when we were developing the centers and corridors map that was adopted in the 2035 comprehensive plan. But it was, I would say the 72nd and Flavel area was identified as a question mark. And so there was a feeling that it just wasn't ripe enough, or it was an area that needed further study. And so that's kind of the impetus for why we're doing this plan now. Another area that had also a question mark, so you can just kind of contextually see, would be the Burlingame area in Southwest Portland. So they're at, I guess it's Taylor's Ferry and Terwilliger. So that's another kind of area that was a question mark when we were doing this initial analysis. But again, that's the whole impetus or the whole purpose for why we're wanting to do this project.
Thank you. And yeah, good. Yeah, jump in.
Yeah, so just and Brian and I are going to probably toggle back and forth on some of this, but on the land use map here, this right here is the comprehensive plan map. Just noting that there are 2 land use maps in the city of Portland, the comprehensive plan map and the zoning map. In most cases, there's not a whole lot of difference between the two. There's actually, in the project area, there's about a 4% of the parcels that have an actual difference between the 2 maps. And what the 2 maps are, the comprehensive plan map is like the growth capacity map. Or the policy map, whereas the zoning map is the map that's tied to the regulations, and it's also tied to what can be constructed today. So when I say that there's a 4% difference, that just means that there are a few parcels that potentially could go through a zone change to have a higher development capacity. So 4%. And then also on this map, I would say that what you see is a lot of yellow on the map, and that is our single dwelling designation. So we have about 74% of the geography in the project area is single dwelling. That's a pretty high percentage compared to citywide. In most places of the city, you're looking at more of a 40% for single dwelling. So just, again, some comparisons. Another comparison I would say is that this geography is actually pretty low on commercial mixed use zoning. So typically we have about 7 or 8% citywide, and this geography has just under 6%. It's about 5.9%. So that's, you know, just, these are just some observations that we have. And then the multi-dwelling zoning is usually in an area we have the multi-dwelling zoning and the commercial mixed use together is about 15 to 18%. And here we have multi-dwelling zoning as 10%. So again, just some observations. And then also what's really important, I know, to this community is parks and open space. And in this geography, excuse me, we have 6%. Which is actually pretty comparable to the citywide average. So,
great, thanks.
Hey Marty, I got a question real quick.
Yeah.
I thought that the single family dwelling zoning was knocked down or thrown out or something.
Yeah, I mean that may be some advocacy terminology, but I wouldn't say it's totally the case. Michael is correct that, probably for 6 or 7 years, we've been working on the residential infill project, which specifically re-examined both the zoning regulations for single dwelling zones as well as the mapping for single dwelling zones. And so the single dwelling zones have evolved to, as of I think it's August 1st, those new regulations will be effective. But they do allow for slightly more density. And so instead of one house per lot, you're now looking at the ability to do a duplex or 2 ADUs. And if you are a community development corporation like Rose CDC or affordable housing provider, then you do have the ability to do slightly more. So it's kind of getting, it's a gentle increase, but it's not what we would call multi-dwelling housing or multi-dwelling zoning.
Okay, thanks. Did you want to share this one? Yeah.
Yeah, sure. So this is the commercial mixed use map. And so it kind of aligns with the centers and corridors mapping that we saw earlier. So you can see kind of the locations where we have commercial mixed use zoning. They're along Woodstock in the west, along Foster Road, which is kind of on the northern boundary, and then along 82nd. And then we have these little kind of extensions of commercial mixed use zoning, or these little nodes kind of along 52nd and, down 52nd and then down 72nd, as well as along Duke and Flavel. And so there's just these little pockets of commercial zoning. And the colors on the map kind of show intensity. And so your light pink is kind of your, I would say, it would be no more than 3 stories can be built per the regulations, although market has a lot to play with what gets built as well. Your orange on the map is more of a 4, potentially a 5-story development, and then the darker colors allow for a little bit more of what we call commercial employment. So there's more ability to do some manufacturing in those areas, but also allow for 4-story to 5-story development. And then kind of what's not on this map, of course, is the Lentz Town Center. I think the key is kind of hiding that, but definitely significant more development capacity in the Lentz Town Center. And this map right here, so we have been working with Dr. Lisa Bates at PSU on developing a gentrification at-risk map. A number of years ago, a lot of the demographics that Brian actually walked us through are actually things that we track as far as indicators for where areas could be at risk for gentrification based on the vulnerability of the populations. And so we are obviously looking at how many people are renting in a geography, how many people have less or high school education attainment or less. We're looking at concentrations of our BIPOC communities. And then we're also looking at household income. So those are kind of the things that we are looking at. Recently, we did update the gentrification at-risk maps to include what the market is doing. So basically what the appreciation of the land. And so that's actually been an evolution of how we are looking at this. But just in the geography, we do have, it's actually the middle color orange on the map, which is an early to type 1. So gentrification at risk area. So they're essentially west of 72nd, and then also east of 82nd. So in the Lentz portion of the project area. And then we do have gentrification at risk. which is really between the band. Sorry, my internet's a little unstable. It's really the band of concern for us is the 72nd to 82nd area, and then the area south of the Springwater Corridor. So those are the geographies within the project area that are, we're considering those areas with much care and concern. Anna?
Yeah, I have a question about the appreciation of the property values. I mean, there are some significant jumps in the last year.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just wondering if you have, now with a residential infill project, you know, being an EFIC, do you have some kind of projection of how that will influence further development? Because I mean, I see in my neighborhood, people say like, oh, we can never afford these houses here, and you have a complete different group of people moving in. So
yeah, I mean, we
have a projection. So
yeah, you know, this data is not as recent as the last 6 months. And so it's definitely something that we, you know, it's definitely recent as of the last 12 months. But it's something that we are needing to constantly kind of keep an eye on. So I'm not, yeah, I would be curious. And I don't know, and this is actually a question that I need to follow up on, like how regularly this is updated with the market, and the market just is moving very, very quickly, as we know.
Well, it's just because there are prediction models that real estate developers are using, and maybe it's worthwhile to adopt some of those tools. I have no idea how it works, but I would assume that that's something we might want to look at as well.
Okay. Yeah, let's definitely have a conversation about that. Vivian?
Yeah, Marty, I just have a quick question. So I see the red shades and orange shades for gentrification to come, and then the blue shades for where gentrification has happened. Correct. I'm wondering what the blank or non-colored spaces are in the west side of Brentwood are.
Yeah, they're not registering. So these are areas that are, you know, I don't know if relatively stable is the right terminology here, but they are, the demographics are not where we are considering them vulnerable. And also, you know, so that's, I think that's essentially what the map is conveying here.
Okay, gotcha. Thanks.
I'll go to the next one. Did you want to share this, Marty, or do you want me to?
Yeah, why don't you, I think I'll hand it off to you on this one, but.
Okay, yeah, and I'm gonna probably go quickly just so we make sure we have time for the breakout rooms. But this sort of just is talking about existing housing types over here. So, you know, a lot of single family housing in the project area. And there is some anticipated growth by 2035, but it's the growth would be 15%, where the citywide increase is 25%. And then this just shows sort of where the residential development is happening. So the bigger blue circles are multifamily, and sort of in the middle housing as opposed to single family or ADUs. So you can see a lot of sort of ADUs and single family throughout, whereas the multifamily is sort of in that where the sort of centers are. So Woodstock, and Foster, Lentz areas. And this is just trends in fall enrollment, and then this just notes where the public schools are. So high school enrollment, and then elementary and middle school. So maybe you find that interesting that high school enrollment is sort of gradually increasing over the last 10 years, whereas elementary and middle school is flat or decreasing. And then this is just a collection of maps, but this shows streams and floodplains in the area, the tree canopy, which unfortunately it might be a little small, but I think, you know, there's sort of heavier, obviously, or if you know, I'm sure you're aware, in sort of the Eastmoreland areas, in Woodstock, and then sort of it lessens as you go further east, and that's fairly, you know, closely correlated to the urban heat island in terms of the high afternoon temperatures out in the east of the project area.
Yeah, and I wanted to jump in on the heat island, and I think it's just especially important today, but with the experiences of climate change, it's just something that is just such a priority for us to be all thinking about and taking action on. But one of the reasons why this area is so needed to have kind of city support is because this geography is an urban heat island, and specifically Flavel is that you can kind of see the red along the map is that is Flavel, and the highest concentration of red is between 72nd and 82nd on Flavel. So that's just kind of the area that it'd be great with the new transportation improvements that go in, that there be some greening that happens there. And really quickly, our citywide goal for tree canopy is 33% of coverage. This geography is more around kind of the 27 to 28%. So it's not even meeting the citywide goal. And then I would say kind of our urban foresters, actually, their goal is 40%. So that just kind of gives you some context of one of the things that we would really like to work on and include in conversation in this plan.
Thanks. Jumping over now to more transportation focused items, but this just gives you a high level look at so the street surfaces in the project area. So in case it's hard to see, these pink lines are the unpaved streets without curbs in the area. These blue dotted lines are alleyways, which you find a lot sort of in the north area, sort of around Woodstock, and then the yellow is paved streets without curbs, which you see a lot of in Brentwood, Darlington. Paved streets with curbs are sort of the sort of main streets through the area, Harold, Holgate, Foster. And then some other just, I guess streets impassable to motor vehicles, these sort of streets over here. Shane, I don't know, you might want to help me identify what those would be. Are those?
There's a few in the southwest corner of the project area.
Okay, and those just,
yeah.
Okay, yeah.
So kind of paper streets, just rights of way that don't have any improvements at all along them. Often just kind of brush and bushes with kind of goat paths through.
Okay.
Yeah, one good example is some down by the Springwater. What might look like a street isn't really a street. In some cases, they're at the southeast corner, so there's really less connectivity than there should be by the way it was platted out.
Okay, thanks. This highlights where the pedestrian crossings are in the area, with pedestrian crossing signals, these triangles, traffic signals, which I'm sure you're aware of, and then marked crosswalks. And the sort of solid lines are where it doesn't meet the guidelines for the maximum distance between safe crossings on sort of these the more major traffic streets. So you can see that there's a lot of gaps within the project area of places where we have new pedestrian guidelines out of our PED-PDX plan outlined either 530 feet in a center or a pedestrian district, and then 800 feet otherwise. And you can see that there's just a lot of gaps in project area that don't meet those guidelines. You know, this whole section of Woodstock between 52nd and 72nd, for example. So that's something.
Yeah. And just so people know, those are very new guidelines. Just in the last couple of years that we adopted those in the PED-PDX plan. Before that, marked crossings were really just an engineering judgment. So it was kind of up to whatever traffic engineer would be assigned, and they would sort of decide based on their sort of expertise whether a crossing would go in. And what we found is that we consistently would be ending up with long gaps between crossings. And so now we have guidelines that say we really should have a marked crosswalk at least that distance apart, that 530 or 800 feet. But because it's pretty new, we have a long ways to go before we can have enough funding and identify the locations to be able to fill that.
Thanks. This highlights the sort of sidewalk connectivity in the area. So these gray lines would be streets with sidewalks, and then pink with or streets with no sidewalks. So you can see here, you know, a lot of the Brentwood-Darlington neighborhood is the section without sidewalks, with still some gaps really throughout the project area. But that concentration, you know, really in the south.
I've been told, just so people know, I've been told that Brentwood-Darlington technically has the least amount of sidewalks of any actual neighborhood in the city. So that's quite something when we often think about East Portland, east of I-205 as having the worst issues. It's a big issue here. And then also we learned recently about the little pocket that does have sidewalks near Clatsop Street there was done through a community development grant long ago. And so that's kind of interesting how it changes right there.
Yeah. Yeah, not to dwell on this too long, but I think we'll be very interested in getting your feedback and feedback from the community about which of these streets with this, how would we prioritize sort of improving these streets that don't have sidewalks, or some feel more comfortable than others in terms of walking. But yeah, just that's a good point, Seth, thanks. And again, showing the bike network, you can see there's some sort of main areas. We're calling these ones with black, that have the black outlines, Springwater, parts of 45th, ones that are low stress, which you see there's pretty limited options in the area. And then while there are some other streets with bike lanes, there's still some gaps in that connectivity and facilities that we would not necessarily call low stress anymore based on our standards today. And in terms of the transit network, these are our frequent bus lines, the green, and then the non-frequent bus lines. So you can see the different routing, and then where the bigger blue in terms of black are where we have more people picked up or dropped off at a given stop. You can see go ahead.
The gaps that really stick out to us are Woodstock east of 52nd Avenue. As Marty showed, that's a designated corridor, and it has multi-dwelling zoning all along it, but has no bus service to go between Woodstock and Lentz. And then Flavel has a gap there, 72nd to 82nd, which is an area with a lot of low-income residents, manufactured home parks, a school. So there's some obvious gaps that kind of jump out to us, and the service patterns are sort of stair-step through the neighborhood instead of running in a normal kind of east-west, north-south fashion. And this, it's a little grainy, so I apologize for that, but this does show what we did here is show sort of where people are commuting to for employment out of the project area. So it's showing that there's really high concentrations of people going to downtown, to OHSU, as well as some going to the Hollywood Providence area. And there's some sort of scattering throughout the southeast area,
even down into Milwaukee, Clackamas, some places, some outliers, but the typical being downtown and OHSU. And this highlights the just mode share of how people get around. So, and again, this is really work commute data. We're actively looking at ways that we can improve how we sort of tell this story. Just, as sort of the last year showed us that sort of commute patterns are changing. And we want to capture sort of how people get around for every trip, not just their work trips. But we have limited data currently, and just sort of wanted to flag that you'll see some higher sort of transit ridership in the sort of the northwest quadrant of the area, Woodstock, and also the sort of bike to work patterns as well, higher there. And then the bike and transit sort of ridership somewhat decline as you go further south and east. But there's also a lot of drive alone to work in the southwest segments as well, or census tracts. So that's something new. And then the walk to work is relatively low throughout the project area, but there's higher walk to work rates outside, just outside the area, as well as some bike to work rates. And this highlights,
I think Jed had a question.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, about this one. I was curious. I could see why splitting up transit and walk to work would be important in some neighborhoods.
Mm-hmm.
When we look at a neighborhood like this where there's not a lot of places to walk to work, when planning, do you also assume that people who take transit to work do want improvements in walking infrastructure? Because I mean, most people have to walk pretty far to get to a bus stop in this area too, or does that come up at all?
Yeah, that's a good point. And this is sort of, I think, how the census question is asked is sort of what your, the largest percentage of your trip is done by that mode, so it would be transit in that case, but obviously they have to walk to get to the bus stop. So this is it's a limitation in the census data that we have, but as we sort of think about this and start developing recommendations, that's a good point.
Okay.
Yeah, that we should factor them. Yeah. Is there another question? Yeah, so just wanted to highlight where crashes are happening, and the circles here with the black circles are actually fatalities that have occurred, which you'll see on 82nd and Foster, and as well as Holgate. And then a smattering of crashes really on the sort of, I would say the main transportation streets through the area of Woodstock, 72nd, 45th, 52nd. But I'd be interested in, maybe we can talk about this in your small groups if that sort of aligns with what you're seeing. If there's other areas that may not be showing up here as having crashes. And these are just, these are either crashes involving bicyclists, or this is walking. So highlight that first, that this is just walking crashes that are still happening on those areas and mainly at intersections. And then biking, similarly, we see it on those, sort of main busier streets, I'd say, with, again, fatalities that have occurred on 82nd. And then in cars, this is fatal and serious. So the bike and ped are all crashes that have happened. And then this is just for fatal and serious. But again, it's fairly similar, or at least there's some correlation in the roads where they're seeing those crashes in terms of Foster, Woodstock, 82nd, 72nd. And
I did want to add,
yeah.
I think a lot of the data for Foster is from before the Foster Safety Project happened. So hopefully those will go down as a result of that project.
I've got a question about that too, since this data is before the Foster project that gave Foster a diet, does that mean that the data for Woodstock is also before the Foster diet? Because the difference that Woodstock is now after that Foster diet is insane. So
Yeah,
how old is this data? Basically?
Shane, is this 2013 to 2017?
Yeah, this crash data is through 2018.
18.
But we do have traffic counts that show speed and volumes for these streets as recent as this February.
Okay, so if we don't show that now, we can follow up with that.
Yeah, we can do more research. This is just the most easily accessible data source for crashes that we have.
That's a good point. And just in the interest of time, I'm gonna really go through these quickly and just highlight sort of the traffic classifications. In our TSP, we do have classifications sort of identifying how roads should function and what modes should be prioritized on those roads. And so just highlighting in the area, this is the major walking classifications with the dark purple being where we see major city walkways, and the blue is city walkways through the area. And then bicycle classifications, the major city bikeways, the streets that are classified as that as opposed to the city bikeways. And our, because of the bike plan that we use, a lot of the streets are major city bikeways or city bikeways. The transit classifications, which are pretty similar to the transit map we showed, but do want to, as Zeph mentioned, you see this connection at Woodstock. It's not in the transit map, and also Flavel. And that's what we got for you. Are there any questions? I'm seeing the chat, but
can I jump in? I was looking at the bike a few slides back.
Yeah.
And I was trying to distinguish between the darker green and the lighter green.
Yeah.
And then was surprised to see lighter green on 82nd Avenue, so got confused. The city bikeway, it looked like.
Yeah, these are city bikeways or major city bikeways.
So what does it mean that 82nd Avenue with limited sidewalks and no shoulders classified as a city bikeway?
So these are usually, I would say, pretty aspirational. The idea is to identify streets where we ideally would have a bike connection. But on a street like 82nd Avenue, what it's really saying is that when you do a corridor plan for that street, you need to at least seriously consider bikeways. So for example, we are going to be doing a planning process for 82nd Avenue because the legislature just approved the jurisdictional transfer to Portland. It doesn't necessarily mean there will be bike lanes on 82nd. It means that we need to consider that and either put bike lanes on 82nd or find a really good parallel route and improve that. So to some extent, the 80s bikeway and the 70s bikeways could be seen as the parallels, but then we have to make sure we have really good connections to 82nd. So it kind of makes it part of the project, even if we decided to prioritize other things.
Thank you.
Should it be called something other than existing conditions then, if it's not an actual existing condition?
Yeah, these classifications are a little confusing. It's existing in terms of this is our policy, but I agree that it's a little confusing to have the word existing on here. So it's really part of our policy review of what we want these to be.
Confusing, but some might also say misleading.
And I would also say that your question or statement is speaking to Zeph's philosophical heart. So he also agrees with you on that.
Yeah, I mean, all of these classifications are kind of the city's statement about our intent, but it's obviously, this is a very dense network that we're not anywhere close to achieving.
Well, with that, we would like to sort of allow you to get to know each other better and talk about these things in more detail if you have questions to bring them up with the group. And we're planning to separate you all into about groups of maybe 4 or 5 and just want to get your take on what we just showed you. So if there's something that you learned or surprised you, if there's something that wasn't shared and you'd say, oh, I really, you shared about this, but I want to know more about that. We'd love for you to just talk amongst each other with that. And we'll probably do about 10 minutes for that discussion, maybe a little bit less just in the interest of time, and then come back together. And hopefully one person from that group can be designated as the person to just share a brief summary of what you talked about. So Shane, are we ready to do that?
We are good to go. You ready?
I think we're good. Yeah.
All right.
So we'll see you all in a little bit. Yeah, so we want to get into the public involvement plan, but just wanted to do, if somebody can, as Marty just put in the chat, if you can report out in your group about something you learned or something that surprised you, we'd just love to hear how that went and what you talked about. So room 1 was the room with Aaron, Ben, Kathy, and Nick. Anyone want to speak up?
Aaron, I see you going for your space bar, or I can. But we talked about the about bus access and bicycle network. The real disparity between the city's aspirations for a bicycle network and the very scanty connectivity that exists now, and also the really poor state of bike access for anybody looking to get to between Max and or to the Max station nearby from anywhere within the project area, and also the disparity between bus access, like really practically usable high frequent service between the northern end of like Mark Scott Arleta and the focus area.
Great, sounds good. Next room was Anna, Eleanor, Melanie, Valeria.
Oops. I can talk on that. We kind of thought that we weren't, greatly surprised by any of the new information presented today, but it was all good information, a good overview. One of the things that we thought would be kind of useful is not just comparing this area to Greater Portland altogether, but doing a neighborhood to neighborhood comparison. So when we're kind of thinking about this area versus either neighborhoods in North Portland or around Division, how did we end up with lesser tree canopy and like different resources kind of compared to like one-off neighborhoods rather than all collectively averaged. And some baseline information that would be information also is kind of what the inventory of like ADA ramps and other resources are here, and what the development of those sort of resources look like, either in this plan or in areas in Portland where it's been successful, those updates have happened.
Okay, great. Thanks. Next room was the room with Jed, Nancy, Pam, and Ryan.
Well, I think I heard my name mentioned in the last 10 seconds as the spokesperson. So I think several of us agreed that there was a lot of information presented, and it will be so helpful to have the slides so that we can spend more time analyzing it. But one of the things that I found personally surprising were the new guidelines on maximum distance between safe crossings, and that can be, I think, very useful in our advocacy efforts. And then I did not have any notes on what other baseline information we might desire. So if anyone from the group has some notes on that, please speak up.
Yeah, if not, it's okay. You can always drop that in the chat. And that goes to everyone if you have thoughts about other things.
Concern about lack of trees, I think, was, really needing to pay attention to that and get something going in that area for the community. It makes such a difference when you have trees and when it's a barren desert. So that's something maybe we can work on almost immediately, you know. So.
Great, thanks. And then the last stream was Carolyn, Michael, Tim, and Vivian.
We didn't decide a speaker, so jump in group, but I think overwhelmingly we were talking about how the data we have is just simply too old to be putting forth any kind of recommendations. And I think it was Michael who brought up that, you know, we need to see the impacts of the Foster Road diet on the other smaller arterial roads because yeah, I mean, that Foster diet has just made, it's been such a huge project in that area and it's impacted everything in the surrounding area. So for us to not get new updated data is just, we can't go forward really with any kind of recommendations was the big one. And then also we talked a little bit at the end, we were just curious on how the city decides what are important safety, like is it speed bumps are the best? Is it crossings with lights are the best? Like, and how is that rated? Is it what's cheapest? What's truly the safest? So that's something that we kind of just threw in right at the end.
Great. On that data question, just want to acknowledge that we have been suffering from a bit of a data gap the last couple of years because of COVID. You know, traffic patterns have changed, people stuck at home. It's completely changed the data. So we have collected some data in the meantime, but we have to take it with a big grain of salt because of COVID. And so I think we're really hopeful that with the things opening up, coming up here, that, you know, by late summer or fall, we should be able to collect data and have it be pretty meaningful and represent maybe what we can expect and will be a better baseline for making decisions.
Yeah, I've been wondering that too, just as I go throughout the world. I'm like, how is COVID just going to change everything? Like, will we have to throw out a lot of data that really isn't even that old just because things are just going to be so radically different? So I'll be curious to hear what professional opinion is about that going forward.
Yeah, it's made a big difference, and I think it has led to some of the really excessive speeding that you all have mentioned and that we've been hearing about all over the city, because there's less congested traffic, and that means that there's more times of day where there's just there's nothing stopping people from speeding really fast, and then people are also bored, and unfortunately some people may be acting out from needing excitement in their lives. So we'll be interested to see how things change this fall and what the effect is.
Yeah, and so first of all, thanks everyone for sharing in your breakout groups, and hopefully it was useful. Let us know if you liked it, if you didn't like it in the chat. That would be good feedback as well. And also just to follow up, I saw the question about do we use like apps like Google Maps. We do, and we also have some other data sources that we can use with ODOT. We have a modeler on in our transportation planning team also that we can sort of look at trends. That's sort of what Zeph was talking about. Some of these trends have been where we sort of look at historical trends to make assumptions that might have been disrupted somewhat. But there's more innovative tools as well that also use sort of cell phone data and things like that. Those are typically more expensive, but yeah, depending on the context and the project, we'll certainly be utilizing those. So yeah, I'm gonna now share my screen and turn it over to Marty to share about the public involvement plan.
Yeah, thank you. And I'm gonna try to go through this fairly quickly. We have about 20 minutes left of this meeting, and we also want to spend some time doing kind of the wrap up and next steps. So next slide, please. So I had shared a draft of the public involvement plan with you last week and again today. I will actually be sharing an updated version of that draft with you either tomorrow or Wednesday, so stay tuned. So you're getting some real live time edits from staff, so kind of a behind the curtain view on how work gets done. But I will share that, this is the table of contents of the public involvement plan. I've highlighted some sections. Obviously, we're open to any sort of feedback that you are able to give us on the public involvement plan, but the highlighted sections are where we really are needing your focus. If you have to prioritize, that's where we're looking for feedback. So specifically the equity considerations section, the public involvement process, which kind of talks about the different kind of time periods or corridors and like the specific community engagement actions that we're proposing. In the appendices, we have a beginning list of the community stakeholders, and so we're really needing help to add to that list. And then at the very end, there's an appendix that is specifically the key priorities identified by community-led efforts. So those do include the most recent Brentwood-Darlington neighborhood assessment and action plan. I also, I didn't get to it yet, but I'm also wanting to add, just do a scan of Apana's J District concept plan, as well as Imagine Black had a planning effort. And so I'm kind of looking at a couple different community-led efforts. So just note that's coming here shortly. Next slide. So the benefits and burdens section is on pages 11 through 13 in the draft. I'm just wanting to highlight that we've had a lot of internal conversations with staff on the potential benefits and burdens. We also had a similar conversation with our technical advisory committee, and we're also wanting to have this conversation and have this be an ongoing conversation with the project advisory committee. So very specifically, we're just acknowledging that this project is scoped to consider land use and zoning code, transportation improvements, and other public actions that may have impacts and indirectly benefits and burdens different stakeholders in different communities. We obviously are trying to mitigate the burdens. But this is, I would say, there's a commitment to doing this analysis, but truly the forecasting of what potential benefits and burdens could be is tricky. And so this is definitely a growing body of work in planning, and it's really having as much information from especially the most vulnerable communities kind of help us shape what we want to do and what we don't want to do as we're going in and doing a city intervention. So in the benefits and burdens section, there is, and this is not in the version I gave you today, but it'll be in the version that comes out on Tuesday or Wednesday. There's the matrices that has all of the kind of the brainstorm of the benefits and burdens specific to this project that, again, the staff and the technical advisory group did. We're also wanting you to participate in that brainstorm. And so there's an exercise that we're going to follow up at the end of this meeting to help with that brainstorm. And next slide. One of the things that we want to do too is we want to have key equity goals for this project. And so these right here are the 6 equity goals. They are a draft. They are on page 13 of the draft public involvement plan. These are kind of I would say the headlines of each of the draft equity goals, but there's a little bit more written text that kind of describes each one of the goals in the document. So again, these are draft, and part of our exercise with your review of the public involvement plan is that we move these so they're no longer draft. So as we're going forth in conducting this project, we will have some agreed upon key equity goals. So really quickly, we have, I would say, 4 draft equity goals that are more outcomes. And then we have 2 that are more related to kind of the process. So that's kind of how these have been developed. And so again, this is a really critical piece to get feedback on from the Project Advisory Committee. Next slide. Just stepping back a bit, just a reminder that we have 4 advisory bodies for this particular project. We have the Technical Advisory Committee, which is made up of agency and city bureau representatives. So these are folks that have kind of the institutional technical readiness with reviewing our draft documents and providing us with their information, as well as, hopefully I'm online again, just with their knowledge of how their bureaus work. So that's kind of their role. Project Advisory Committee, you all, again, you are the external, but also the community experts that have been selected to have kind of an ongoing role on this project. And so we hope that there's going to be a shared learning experience with this group and with us too. And specifically, what we're asking for is assist with the development of the public involvement plan. So that's a really key component. Provide input to staff about the project area and its existing conditions. And I just want to emphasize that the existing conditions also mean the people. So it's not just the built environment or the natural environment, but it's also the lived experience of the people. Obviously, when we start developing some draft recommendations, whether they come from the community or whether they come from the city, providing us feedback on that. And then moving into, if we have this bundle of transportation and this bundle of land use recommendations, what are the other interventions that we need to consider to really make sure that we have a city intervention that provides stability to the people that live in the area. Next slide. So 2 more advisory bodies, the Planning and Sustainability Commission, which we are super honored that Valerie, who's a member of the Project Advisory Committee, also serves on the Planning and Sustainability Commission. So that is a huge win for us. But whenever we ultimately take a draft plan, the Planning and Sustainability Commission will be the first body that we take it to and hold a public hearing. And so there would be public notice that's sent out, and then we hold a public hearing, and the conversation changes at that point. It changes from one of conversation and collaboration to one of testimony. Just acknowledging that. And then the Planning and Sustainability Commission, they then make their recommendation, which could be amendments to recommendations that come from staff and from the process with the Project Advisory Committee. They can make amendments to that, and then their recommendation is forwarded on to City Council. And then we have a public hearing and public notice that is before City Council. And then they are the ultimate decision-making body. Next slide. So in the draft plan, we do have a section on levels of participation. So they range anywhere from inform, consult, involve, collaborate to empower. In a planning effort like this, we are going to be, for the most part, in the inform to collaborate side of the spectrum. The empowerment actually could be where there's an information that was shared tonight, for example, like the new guidelines on distance for ped crossings. That is where information like that could be used to empower a community-led effort, or community advocacy. So that's an example of empower. Next slide. So just to give you some examples of levels of participation and then kind of the spectrum of engagement and how the public can have increased level of participation or increased ability to help develop the recommendations. This is kind of the spectrum. I don't want to necessarily go through each one because we don't have time, but this just gives you kind of a flavor of how we are kind of categorizing the types of public engagement that we do as a city, but also specifically that we could do in this project. And then the next slide. And so this right here is just some examples of what we're planning to do this summer. And so we have, public information, which is just kind of generally getting the word out and building awareness about the project. We have, we're planning to do an online interactive map tool, and a corresponding print survey, which is what we would translate into Spanish, Chinese, and Vietnamese, and so that's an example of consulting with the community. And also getting a little bit deeper, we're wanting to do some interviews of some key community stakeholders. And this is where we're really wanting to prioritize individuals from our equity priority communities. And so whether it's from, our BIPOC neighbors that live in the project area, or it could be, partnering with Nick and reaching out to residents of Rose CDC housing that's in the area, or doing some canvassing or reaching out to folks that live in some of the mobile home parks that are in the project area. So those are some examples of some potential interviewees. And if you have specific people, we would sure love to know any recommendations that you have in that area. And then to collaborate, collaboration, we view this project advisory committee as an opportunity for us to collaborate and share ideas and have recommendations that are formed together. And then one last little nugget is that we have developed one neighborhood bike/walking tour that staff held just with staff. But if there is some interest with our more geographic focused folks, there's definitely an interest in creating some neighborhood walking, biking, bus tours that people can do independently and kind of learn about the area themselves. And so that's something that would be really great and seasonal to do this summer. Next slide. Sorry. This slide right here, I mentioned it earlier, was the slide that we shared at our last meeting that just kind of gives you kind of a sense of kind of the process, but then also the dates specifically are kind of our proposal of when we would be having project advisory committee meetings. And so that's kind of the time frame that we're looking at. So that's it right here. And then I think my last slide, yes. So this right here, the Jamboard link, which I believe Brian is going to help me by putting that in the chat. This is where we're actually asking for you to participate and provide feedback. And this can be done on your own time. We are asking that you do this at least by Monday, July 12th. That's kind of when we would need your comments added to it. It already is, for the most part, populated because, again, what you're seeing is staff brainstorming and you're seeing technical advisory committee additions. And so, we have a slide on identification of key community stakeholders. So this is kind of the brainstorm that has happened. The next slide is our benefits and burdens brainstorm, which again, we would love for you to participate in this with us, and we would love to add your thoughts to the public involvement plan matrix on this. The next slide is just in general outreach and community strategy kind of ideas or brainstorming. We do have pretty good staff and staff capacity, and so like if there are anything on this that you really think would be an extra innovative way to do engagement, you know, maybe you can steal it or put a star by it, that would be really helpful for us. And then the next slide is
Are you seeing that? It should be on my screen. I don't know.
So this is new. So this is so this is again, okay, hopefully I'm back now. This is again the draft key equity goals, and you know, we're inviting you to a lot, you know, did we get these right? Can they be improved? We probably don't want to have too many, but gosh, are we missing one? So this is the type of, you know, feedback that we're looking for specifically from the Project Advisory Committee.
Yeah, and something came up actually, Marty, in the chat from Nick. So, so we can throw that in here, and that's, yeah, that's a great place.
Okay, and then would you mind doing a tutorial on how to do a sticky for those of folks that are new to Jamboard?
Are you seeing the Jamboard on my screen?
I am.
Okay, great. So hopefully people have seen this, but if not, that's the link, and we'll try to share that link as well when we follow up. But you just go on here, and if you you click through the boards up at the top here, so you can see the different prompts that we have, and then you click the sticky note, and that just creates a sticky note, and you can say, you know, the following stakeholders should be engaged, you know, and if you want to say churches, you just click save, and that comes up. You can do as many as you want, and then just click and hold to move it, and you can reposition it. You don't have to, or you know, resize it if you want. If you think it's really good, you can make it super big, and then if you don't like it, go through and delete it. Another good way to do this is if you see a Pano on there and you agree, you can just say like +1 and do that, and then make it small, but put it right next to it if you sort of agree with that and validate it. So those are the tips and tricks, but we'd love for you to participate. Any questions?
Yeah, I've got one real quick.
Aaron had a.
Oh yeah.
Who wants to go?
Well, Aaron, Michael, you can go to Aaron. Should we sign our notes? You don't have to necessarily. I'd say whatever you're comfortable with. If you want us to know that you said it or it's particular, feel free, but you don't have to. Yeah, go ahead, Michael.
So there's quite a bit of talk about equity, which I think is great and good, and I like the direction that it's going. There's obviously a reason why this particular neighborhood is so drastically different than, say, Irvington or Overlook or something like that. So before we get into the equity portions of this, will there be an acknowledgement from the city about why this part of town is so different? Explaining the racism behind it, explaining the redlining behind it, because you can look at the University of Richmond put together a really nice GIS redlining map where you can literally click on this area and it tells you about all the undesirables that lived here. So redlining plays a really big role in why this part of town is the way it is, and the city played a role in that. So in order to really be equitable about this, the city needs to acknowledge that first and foremost.
Yeah, we have been working on a document. It's not quite ready yet, but that talks about the history of the area, the annexation sort of fights that happened, and the eventual annexation, how that happened. That's good to know about that research. We'll definitely follow up on that and talk about the redlining. And also, you know, we want to acknowledge the property tax disparities that have, you know, through no fault of our own, a statewide measure, but it's really led to a lot of issues as far as fairness there. So yeah, we'll be kind of putting together some history and lessons learned from why it is how it is. And definitely send any other resources we can draw from there, because you all probably know a lot more than us about the area.
And I think one thing that we struggle with a little bit with the history section is that so much of the history has already been published in planning documents with all the neighborhood planning efforts that were done in like the early 90s, and the Outer Southeast Community Plan, et cetera. And so we've been kind of pulling excerpts from those planning efforts, but we're not necessarily wanting to duplicate the history that's already been in, you know, planning documents. And so if there's any suggestions or guidance that you have on that, that would be helpful, because we're kind of struggling with that actually. And the Brentwood Darlington neighborhood assessment and action plan actually had a pretty robust section on history. And so again, we're not wanting to duplicate that, but we're also, you know, this is the city's you know, planning effort and planning documents. And so what, you know, what is needed to come from our voice, I guess. And I think we've heard Michael has some suggestions there too.
Well, we're a few minutes over, so I want to acknowledge that. Thanks everyone for sticking around. I'll share this last slide and then I'll stop sharing so we can say goodbye. But just to flag that the next meeting, you know, we do have tentatively scheduled for September 27th. It seems like a long ways away, but I'm sure it'll be here quickly. So we'll talk about summer outreach and some of the movement into alternatives analysis. And we ask that you look at the public involvement plan and send us comments by a week from next Monday. And also dig into the Jamboard. We will we'll share the link with the other meeting materials that we send out. And also we'll be sharing the existing conditions report. So if there's any other feedback you have about things that we should add or that's missing, as we talked about tonight, that would be great to have you share that as well. So thanks again, everyone, for sticking around. And anyone have any last words or thoughts? Otherwise, I'll let Marty close us out tonight. I don't think so.
I'm trying to pause to see if anybody has anything to say. Okay. Well, you know, thanks so much for being here tonight. You know, you will expect an email from me either Tuesday or Wednesday of this week that kind of lists out the updated public involvement plan, the link to the Jamboard, although it looks like quite a few people got into it tonight, so that's great. And then I think one thing that you know, I'm trying to think about is just how to keep engaged with all of you kind of through the month of July and the month of August and the beginning of September. And so that's going to be really important. So we'll be sending, you know, at least kind of regular emails or other correspondence so you can be tracking along the way. But I do like this idea too of scheduling an informal in-person meetup in the project area. And so I'm kind of thinking about that, but if anybody has ideas or suggestions, that would be really lovely to get together in person. So feel free to send me an email or ideas on that. And that's it for me. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Al.
I'm going to catch up on this meeting chat conversation now. Yeah, I'm interested to read the link that Michael shared. That's great.
Yeah. Yeah, I hadn't heard of that.
Yeah, you know, I'm so familiar with it and other parts of the city. So I just, yeah, I'll be curious to understand what the redlining situation was in the project area for sure.
Well, it has this part as the yellow decline. So it's not your traditional red lined part of town. It's the yellow lined, which is the declining part, which still gets like the reduced services, the reduced investment, the reduced home ownership. It still suffers from the same stuff. It's just not as like blatant as the red line parts. But the racist stuff that's in it is just ridiculous.
Is it, well, I need to obviously look at it, but are there areas that you want to point out, or is it pretty easy to find?
It's pretty easy to find.
Okay.
If you click on this link that Jed posted in here, it goes right to, you can see our project area is very blatantly yellow lined in there. And I had read those documents from the 90s, particularly the Mount Scott Arletta plan. And it's super whitewashed, which I would expect from the 90s. And it's an interesting document, but it doesn't go into this history, which I think is really important these days when we're trying to address that and be anti-racist. So it's really important to acknowledge everything that we've done that's got to this point that's bad. And now we have to start the process of fixing it.
Yeah, no, thank you very much.
Yeah, I appreciate this work y'all are doing. So goodbye, everybody.
Yeah, have a good night. Stay cool.
Good night.
Thank you, Marty, for facilitating.
Well, and thanks to Brian too. He does a phenomenal, he's so understated in it, but he does a great job. And so Pam, I just wanted to say I was so appreciative of your email to Stephanie and Chelsea with forwarding on the agenda. You're like my dream representative, because you actually like, at least I get to see it. maybe other people are doing that and I just don't see it, but you're so great at communicating. I'm going to be sending out an updated version of the public involvement plan. So I just want to make sure that the review and the comments are on that. So you'll get it's a little bit longer.
I think you're muted, Pam.
Sorry, I went out to that Richmond analysis and then my Zoom screen disappeared. So I did hear you, Marty, and I will send the revised version to the Brentwood Darlington Neighborhood Association. Their monthly board meeting is this Thursday, and I'm going to try and get a few minutes on the agenda just to let them know about the July 12th deadline, if nothing else, for the public involvement plan input.
Great, that's awesome, thank you.
The Brentwood Darlington Neighborhood Association kicks butt. They're so good.
So organized. Yeah. I aspire to operate my own business and life like Brentwood Darlington Neighborhood Association.
We just need to get our membership up after COVID. I mean, it took a big hit.
Well, maybe this is just me being Pollyanna. I would hope that people would start coming out of the woodworks here pretty soon. People are kind of craving connecting again. I hope that's the case.
I think so. Well, I think I'm going to sign off. Feed my cats their dinner. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Pam.
Bye, Pam.
Bye.
I told my kids that I was in a meeting until 8, and so they had to be quiet. And it is now 8:12, and the noise level in my house is just, it is what it is.
I've got notes on a Microsoft Word document. Do you want me just to send it to, so it'll be y'all and Brian?
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, the 3 of us would be great.
Cool. I will send that out either tonight or tomorrow morning.
Perfect. Perfect.
Cool.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you all. Good job first meeting, Scott. Woohoo.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Too. Get some rest and some cooling activities.
Yeah, that was great. It was wonderful. And Corrine, I'll see you tomorrow morning.
Yeah, I'll see you tomorrow. Okay,
Bye.
take care, everyone. Bye.